The Islamic belief system has evolved, spread, and flourished using dodges and contrivances. Muwalasa wa mudaja wa murawaka. There is no Muslim world according to this article. It says, Islam is not encoded in anyone's DNA. Being religious is a personal choice, one that every individual is free to make or not, as stated in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This is not to say that no one living in the swath of territory from Morocco to Indonesia adheres to Islam out of intimate conviction. Many obviously do, yet, as long as coercion isn't replaced by freedom of choice, the extent to which these people can be truly identified with the Islamic faith is dubious. The Arabic Qur'an, not a translated Qur'an, is the heart, the soul, and substrate of the Islamic belief system. It governs Muslims. The Arabic Qur'an speaks of itself as a revelation, a message in Arabic, in Surah 452, Surah 1037, Surah 1337, Surah 2113, and Surah 42:7, as well as in other places. It is Hukman Arabiyan. It can be asserted that anyone who by birth is not an Arab speaker and who has submitted to Islam as a believer before reading and understanding the Quran in Arabic most likely has been misled, duped, deceived, and exposed to misinterpretations and contrivances by Islam's religious leaders. This has been a factor throughout Islamic history following the death of the Prophet. It is discussed below with regard to Surah 436. There are Quranic teachings that shed light on the veracity of the assertion. Surah 436 provides an example. Inna Allaha la yuhibbu man kana mukhtalan fakhuran. It is translated authoritatively as, for Allah loveth not the arrogant, the vainglorious. However, it more directly states in the Arabic that Allah does not love those who are sly, hypocritical deceivers. Then Surah 2106 provides an anchor in the sea of contrivances. It reveals that Allah can provide a new message, something better or similar, anytime He wishes. Surah 2:106 in the Arabic Qur'an is clear. Its teaching confirms Allah's unlimited power. Allah huwa al-Qadiru. The Arabic Qur'an does not mince words in Surah 2:106. It tells readers that God, the Almighty, can at any time deliver a new message, something similar, or something better. There is nothing that says that God has to rely on a particular type of spokesperson or prophet to convey the message. Surah 2:106 unveils a key contrivance. The deceptive contrivance states the Quran is God's or Allah's final message to the world. The Quran never says such a thing. For over 1,000 years, this contrivance has been preached as truth across the world of Islam. It is, however, mere propaganda. Why? Because it is a misrepresentation that is unsupported by the Arabic Quran and its teaching. The Quran does say it is a message for all the worlds, a message for those who fear Allah, a message for mankind, and a message for all creatures, etc. But nowhere does it say that it is a final message from God for all time. There are other contrivances surrounding who is superior and who is inferior. The Islamic belief system introduced color racism with prejudice to the world as a religious truism. African blacks came to be regarded as Islamic cattle, branded in the womb by Allah, seen to be darkly colored in a predestined manner. Their color was taken to be a clear sign of their genetic inferiority, and the contempt they face under Islam was said to be endorsed in the Quran. Surah 457 covered a part of that determined truism. It says, "We have prepared for those who resist faith, infidels and unbelievers, al-kafirina, a punishment that steeps them in contempt." The light of the Quran illuminated racist outlooks, Idaya al-Islam wa Idaya al-Quran. Islamic believers faithfully deny that Islam had anything to do with generating color racism with prejudice in a manner that had not been seen before. The contrivance itself is wrapped up in both the outlook and the deceptive denials from Islam's religious leaders. Yet, the outlook regarding African blacks and their color as a sign of their animal nature was an entrenched staple within 40 years after the death of the Prophet. It was a fully confirmed truth on the Islamic religious doctrine before the West took it on centuries later, only to wrongly be credited with its creation. The Islamic historical record reveals truths. Here is one of the many examples on record. Nasir ad-Din at-Tusi died in 1274. He was a polymath and a prolific writer. He was an architect, astronomer, biologist, chemist, mathematician, philosopher, physician, physicist, scientist, and theologian. The Muslim scholar Ibn Khaldun, who lived between 1332 and 1406, considered Tusi to be the greatest of the later Persian scholars. Tusi wrote in both Arabic and Persian. Nasir ad-Din at-Tusi wrote, "The Negro does not differ from an animal in anything except the fact that his hands have been lifted from the earth, in no other peculiarity or property, except for what God wished. Many have seen that the ape is more capable of being trained than the Negro and more intelligent." The Arabic Qur'an sustains a reality that most Muslims bypass. In the Arabic in the Qur'an it says, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ هُوَ الْغَنِيُّ الْحَمِيدُ. Truly Allah is free of all wants, worthy of all praise. Scholars under Islam determined that they knew what God wanted with regard to blacks because they turned them into things, household goods and belongings. They were called animals. They were labeled as being cattle. This was certainly repeated by Ibn Khaldun in his introduction to history in the 14th century. In Islam's first 1,000 years, clearly, this was the determination of Islam's learned. Another contrivance propagandized by Muslims is that Islam came to bring equality to mankind, all mankind. The reality across Islamic history tells a different story. The Fatiha from the Quran enjoined Arab Muslims to confirm that they bow to Allah as His favored servants and slaves. Iyaka na'budu. In turn, all unbelievers, al-kafirina, were seen to be placed in a position as ma malakat aymanukum, to be things Muslims' right hands possessed. Surah 436 from the Arabic Qur'an told Arabs to serve Allah and then provided a list of things and people to whom they should do good. The things were what your right hands possess, or their slaves. The Arabic word mukhtalan, translated authoritatively as arrogant, as mentioned earlier, more directly means sly, hypocritical deceiver. Surah 30:28 speaks clearly of the inequality between the Arabs, the favored, and those whom your right hands possess, or ma malakat aymanukum. Surah 1671 also sheds light on the Quran, explaining how God has favored Arabs in a way that makes them superior to those whom their right hands possess. It says, Allah has bestowed His gifts of sustenance more freely on some of you than on others. Those more favored are not going to throw back their gifts to those whom their right hands possess, so as to be equal in that respect. Will they then deny the favors of Allah? Surah 24:31 speaks additionally of masters and the slaves, or those whom their right hands possess, ma malakat aymanukum. But it also adds another dimension because it goes on to speak of male servants free of physical needs. These were Islam's eunuchs, al-Khisyan. Surah 24:58 speaks further also of those whom your right hands possess, Alladeen malakat aymanukum. And it also explains clearly that there are signs that the wise would understand, because كَذَلِكَ يُبَيِّنُ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ الْآيَاتِ. Surah 36:69 and Surah 36:71 also add to providing the insight that allowed for inequalities to be worked upon using the Qur'an as the base, because it explains that the Qur'an is no less than a message and a Qur'an making things clear. It also explains that Allah fashioned certain things and beings or creatures to be put under the dominion of their Arab masters. So when blacks were labeled as Ma Malakat Aymanukam and then dubbed as being cattle, there was this continuing consistency with the message that was in the Quran that came to make things clear. There has been a deliberate intent to evade truth in the matter of assigning proper credit to the Islamic belief system for creating, inaugurating, and spreading color racism with prejudice in its first 1,000 years. The belief systems knowing religious leaders resort to using propaganda supported by fear and intimidation to hide truths in the historical record. It continues to this day in the 21st century. An article from July 20, 2016 titled Muhammad, Peace be upon him, the Man, serves as a closing example. It attributes actions to Muhammad and the Islamic belief system that are simply not true. The article repeats propagandist unrealities or tall tales that are used to ensnare and befuddle those ignorant to the hidden history and suppressed truths in the record of Islam. The article says, Muhammad was a 40-year-old man when, in 610 AD, he heralded a new faith pillared on worshipping only one God as well as the fundamental equality of all human beings. There is no virtue of an Arab over a foreigner, nor a foreigner over an Arab, and neither white skin over black skin, nor black skin over white skin, except by righteousness. Muhammad himself emphasized the essence of universal human equality, breaking key social and economic taboos at the time, banning slavery and allowing all human beings the freedom to worship one God, and giving them the ultimate choice to do so. Contrivances, dodges, and deceptive misleading pronouncements like the things falsely attributed to Muhammad in the article remain prevalent across the world of Islam, stretching across that swath of territory from Morocco to Indonesia and elsewhere. These activities continue a tradition from Islamic religious leaders and believers who, centuries ago, reached into the Quran to bring color racism with prejudice to the world at large. Nowhere across the Islamic world and in the history of the Islamic world can it be sustained that Muhammad actually did ban slavery. Contrivances, dodges, and deceptive misleading pronouncements, all in the name of Allah, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, have long been a staple of the belief system. The learned in Islam have drawn from and cite the Quran, the Prophet Muhammad, doctored history, and questionable records authoritatively to less informed believers and outsiders as an ongoing practice that has frequently been followed to entice converts and spread the belief system. There is much that is fraudulent, there is much that is deceptive, and there is much that needs still to be looked at and reviewed.